We are in a dating crisis right now. 50% of men say that they're not looking for a committed relationship. 50% of women are childless at 30. And then there are more women without children than there are with children. Both men and women are retreating from relationships and finding ways that they could justify this. Women are leading into their careers and men are going their own way. They come up with explanations as to why they don't want to be in a relationship. Women now are out achieving men. There are two women for every one man at a 4-year US college degree by 2030. Women on average between the ages of 21 and 29 earn £1,111 more than men, and they say that they value financial prospects in a partner. About 78% of women say that the stable job is something important for a partner to have. Women are more concerned about a partner's socioeconomic status significantly more than men are. If you have a world where women are attending university at higher rates and more success in employment than men are, at least in the age gap between 21 and 29 range, is when most women are perhaps looking for potential partners. As women climb up through their own hierarchy and competence in education and employment, they further shorten down the potential pool of eligible men that are as educated or more educated, or as employed or more employed than they are, which causes an imbalance in the dating scene. What you get is a very large group of men towards the bottom of this distribution, which are essentially invisible to women. You have a very large distribution and increasing cohort of women to compete for an increasingly small group of high status men who have wealth of options, who are commitment averse, which causes them to use and discard these women, which causes a lot of women to resent all men. There is a big group of men that feel that they are good men that are invisible. And there is a group of portion of women who have achieved educational employment, success, and independence, chasing after a smaller cohort of limited number of high status men. Women that are high achievers with status, employment, and education are also competing with other women with no status or employment, even women who still live at home with their parents, for this very small cohort of guys. There is a huge movement in certain corners of women's advice that any woman who decides to become a mother is essentially a second-class citizen. We need to start putting motherhood on a pedestal. This also, I think, with the dating crisis, has exacerbated the declining birth rate. A meta-analysis by Professor Rizka Kaiser says that above 80% of women who aren't mothers after their fertility window has closed didn't intend to not be mothers. In other words, involuntary childlessness had happened. And they have support groups around the world for these women where they come together to grieve for the families that they never had. Dating apps also haven't been very successful for both men and women. A study by Tinder suggested that women swipe right 4% of the time, while men will swipe right 60% of the time. The Me Too movement was a necessary requirement to call for powerful men to account for misbehaving and using their power to gain sexual access to women. Above 80% of men report not approaching a woman for fear of being seen as creepy. 84% of women stated they want the man to make the first move. Women are terrified of being approached by men because of sexual assault stories, and men are terrified of doing the approaching for being accused of creepy behavior. We have an epidemic of loneliness and sexlessness amongst the sexes in our 4-year, million-year history. Men that do creepy behavior are only a very small minority who repeatedly misbehave. This is from Dr. David Buss's book, Men Behaving Badly. It is one man doing 1,000 bad things, not 1,000 men doing one bad thing to women. High-achieving women, self-made millionaires who are struggling to find romantic partners are now going to sperm donor banks and are going to use their vast resources to be able to support their children. The outcomes as well that you have from single-parent homes seems to be sociosexually girls don't do as well, which is more casual sex, and for boys is much worse. Most men who are incarcerated, commit violent crimes, are homeless, all stem from single parent homes. Non-partnered childless men in society tends to be the most unstable. Men who don't have a reason to behave will commit violent crimes, have a lack of purpose, and be unable to contribute meaningfully to society. The amount of sexlessness has tripled as well from 2008 to 2018, from 8% to 28%. We have greater rates of sexlessness amongst young men, but we don't have a high amount of violence. Chris Williamson also stems his theory from the male sedation hypothesis. In other words, men are retreating to porn and video games to cope with their isolation. According to a stat, the average man between the age 18 and 30 in the US spent 2,000 hours per year playing video games stoned or on prescription drugs. The question is, what do we do from here? I think regardless of how the dating scene is, it is much challenging. We need to see the challenges both sexes are facing in the dating world, and we need to figure out where to go from here. Divorce rates are going through the roof. Mental health is going through the roof. We have both men and women drifting further and further away from each other. And this topic, fascinating, but also at the same time made me very sad.